Hello and namaste, and welcome, and thank you for joining me. I am your ever kooky, weird, wild, wacky, eccentric host, the incorrigible MrZeppo, and that was an original crossover fusion digital jam by Purple Mush and the Political Outrage. Welcome to Volume 2 of my multi-series podcast project of podcasts. And this is Tarot Journal, Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour. And today, my friends, we will be taking a very first look at the pictorial tarot right here in my hands. Brought to you by the lovely Italian folks over at Lo Scarabeo. Lo Scarabeo. Or Scarbeo. I don't know. But they're in Torino. These cards are made in Italy. I may be biased in favor and have a bit of Italian fondness because I had the honor and the pleasure of going to Italy twice with a theater performance troupe of the semi-amateur, semi-professional variety. And we had some magical times there. One of the two things that I regret not doing in Italy. One, taking the time to actually visit the Vatican and try to, shuffle through the endless coils of shoulder-to-shoulder queue through the Sistine Chapel and see what else I can get myself into in terms of, snooping around the Vatican without getting into too much trouble. And getting my tarot read by an authentic, believable, it doesn't feel like a sham, gypsy woman. But not to be all weird and cliche, but there's all that fun tarot history and how it is attributed to by many authoritative sources, but which is then later debunked by others, supposedly also authoritative sources, that the gypsies were the conveyors of ancient lost wisdom vis-a-vis the early tarot decks. Is it tarot or is it tarot? I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I don't mind saying it either way. So new music by PMPO, which may or may not be a good acronym name to try and call my virtual band, but also will be featuring music throughout all the segments by the real-life actual band and new collaborators and new, artist, tribe, soul friends, Gazuda. But that's not what this particular show is about. This particular show is about tarot. You might be wondering why a person who likes to talk about how Donald Trump is a bad politician is into the tarot, and whether or not the tarot or any other oracle has been informing my political opinion. Curiously, it has absolutely not. I do not consult as of yet in any formal fashion for myself or others. So although I do occasionally pick up a deck and ask questions for the purposes of practice and whatnot, and of course this show, and I do intend very much, as this show finally picks up steam, this particular segment, and gets going, to be taking audience-submitted questions for readings, totally anonymous, so no names involved, just ask me a question that is not phrased in a yes or no situation, that is more about, here is some context, fundamental, no names, just core context. What are the paradigms? What are the human energies involved? And what are, I like to use the phrasing, the best next steps? What are the things I could do next to help improve the situation? Those sorts of questions, the kind of thing you'd write in to an advice column about. But I digress. In terms of my other segments, especially Good Morning Trumptopia, where I openly use my free will powers and my free speech authority invested in me not only by the Constitution, but by my very creator, whatever that thing and or being we call God may or may not be, to openly criticize and critique not only the president, but most politicians. In fact, I do get a little broad strokey and say that because of the nature of the work involved, You might as well lump all politicians, even the good ones, into a population you might label highly ego trap, risk oriented. Like their work is just they're exposed to a lot of risk of falling into ego traps. But I digress. Will I in the future be consulting my oracle decks for political context advice? I might. I don't think I'll be doing it before the end of this year because that would be way too ambitious. But then again, that tea is way too hot. I'm a big tea drinker. I'm also a big coffee drinker, trying to switch one out for the other. Of course, it doesn't work good for you if you're drinking coffee and caffeinated tea. Let me tell you that. That's a hard lesson learned in real life right there. So in terms of that question, it has come up generically in the past from like, what, are you going to read Donald Trump's tarot cards? I have not. I never have. My political opinions are my political opinions purely as an observer who has a spiritual foundation in his, the way he views the universe. Tarot. It always sort of haunts me, the question of why anyone would take it seriously, why anyone would give their money to it by buying decks, because I know lots of people that would laugh in my face about it. People have, etc., right? And to that end, my fascination with it and its seemingly organic intrusion into my normal life vis-a-vis people feeling very strongly, quote, spiritually compelled to give me free readings where otherwise they would normally charge for them. I don't know if that was just a marketing tactic because they thought I was a sucker and that would lead me to become a lifelong addict of their product. But I never saw those people again, right? Like I was completely unavailable to them as a future client. But they gave me the readings anyways. Like I advised them, like I'm never probably going to see you ever again. I don't live in this town. It's always happened when I'm abroad or when I'm stuck in a situation that's outside of my normal routine and kind of not able to get away. I'm a captive audience to someone who then feels the really intense spiritual need to read for me. And given those experiences, I've been fascinated and always intrigued. I find much of the artwork truly, genuinely beautiful. And so when an artist makes beautiful art, I try to support that. And I don't have the kind of money to throw around at every artist everywhere. So it's not like I'm not spending hours on, Art Fund Me pages. That's a good name, Art Fund Me. If that's not taken, I want that. Don't go ripping it off. So I try when I can. And the plan is, of course, to like build prosperity through trying to like include that always in future actions as genuine income comes in. But this project, as I've said before, and I'll redundantly explain again for anyone who's new, is an enthusiast's hobby project. I'm not a professional. No one pays me to read tarot. I don't work for a tarot publishing company. No one has hired me to be an influencer. I'm just genuinely curious, interested, intrigued, and appreciative of the art, and have compulsively been unable to say no to tarot decks at bookstores and crystal stores, etc., the way I have in other periods of my life been inexorably drawn to and unable to say no to a book that really just needs to be in my collection. While I am overtly philosophically and politically against materialism, I also acknowledge that there's a benign form of appreciation for the material, right? And that we can have stuff and tchotchkes and trinkets, and we can enjoy them and love them and share them with our families, whatever they are, whether they're tarot decks or whether they're little Buddha statues or they're crucifixes of, depicting the Christ suffering. We can have those and we can avoid the ego traps that are inherent in the flawed nature of those kinds of relationships. And we can be okay with that. And in fact, some of those things bring about spiritual facilitation. They bring about spiritual help. Some might say. And maybe, just maybe, I'm one of those people. Long before I was ever interested in testing the theory of cartomancy, I was actually intrigued by the very, very obscure but but often well described or well written about or interestingly exemplified by certain authors who've come across it in public discourse or whatnot, in public display, especially in the 1800s. In the 1800s, here in the United States, there was a huge, like an explosion, a resurgence is the word I'm looking for, in interest in spiritual and, quote, occult issues or occult things. So, at any rate, I don't know if that music's still playing there or not. Oh, it is. I should turn this off. I have auto ducking on, but I thought I'd turn the volume all the way down, and then I totally didn't. I'm going to turn the volume down on that. Although I hope you've enjoyed the track. It's super long, and it was only meant to be like the first bit that I was going to play as the intro. Let's fade that out. Fading that out, nice and gentle. I bet that sounded ridiculous. This is one of those live episodes, guys, where I totally screw up the tech sometimes. That's why half the time... there we go. Sorry if that was like just blaring in your ears. I might have to edit all that out. And if I have edited all that out, I'll pick up right here with I might have to have just edited all that out. Welcome to the incorrigible MrZeppo's Tarot Journal and Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour. I am your humble host, the incorrigible MrZeppo, reintroducing, just in case I totally ruined my introduction by not understanding how my audio system works on the Sprecher app on my iPad. I've been using GarageBand to put together a little like collection of episodes based on what I like to fancifully label field recordings. That just means that I used my phone instead of my iPad, and that I used the native app that came with my phone called HD Audio Recorder instead of recording live, so that I'm less worried, and it's more about catching things that happen in the moment, impromptu, and so I'm less worried about flubs and what I sound like, etc. And I'm more interested in just the conversation going on. So I've been editing those, and I've been used to that, and I kind of forgot the ins and outs of the Sprecher app here on my iPad. And a recent update or two have added a couple of new features, so I'm not used to how the auto ducking and music bit works. Maybe that all sounded great because I was auto ducking, but I'm going to turn auto ducking off now in case that's doing really weird things to the audio, and we're going to finally resume. So, having said all that, and maybe or maybe not edited it out, having had to edit all of that, or not, maybe I'll just leave it live, because if nothing else, it proves that I'm not a deep fake, right? See my warnings and disclaimers episode. Let us proceed. Let us take a first look at David Corsi's deck, published by Lo Scarbeo, with the delightful beetle icon as their logo, the Pictorial Key Tarot. I'm going to play a different piece of music now as I transition into this delightful moment, because I really want to savor and prepare. Because believe it or not, folks, I'm approaching this as a test or a proof of concept, and the concept is if you approach the deck as a spiritual tool or object, an ally, a spiritual facilitator, that can be, in a very limited, inanimate object kind of way, a container or vessel or transcommunicator, transmitter, receiver, tool for divine consciousness to help us figure our own shit out, then one should take the approach of such moments very seriously, right? Okay, I think I stopped the music. Maybe I didn't have to worry about it this whole time. Maybe it wasn't playing and now it is. I don't know. I don't remember. There used to be a way to like make it stop, but the song I opened with is still playing, but it's all off. I think I paused it now. Great, because I don't want that one to play when I turn the music on. I want to play the other one. Where's the other one? There it is. The following piece of music, while I take a moment to zen out and shake all the giggles out from how goofy this opening has been, and get into my like meditative, contemplative, zen place as I open this deck, which I may or may not have done quite as overtly in my last episode, welcoming a deck, but I did do before starting the show. But now I want to take extra emphasis on today as to point out, like, we're experimenting, right? So I'm going to experiment with doses and volumes and all that. I'm going to play you guys as I take that moment to prepare. Hopefully, I will successfully play only a track, and not two tracks at the same time, a track called Infinite Echoes, Art House Jam, Echo 3, Gazuda Live Jams, November 9th. That's just me. I made up the title. It's a composite, like, time-independent collaboration. There's a jam that I attended. I took a field recording at and did a little bit of tweaking and remixing on and trimmed different portions down into different tracks, called them different things, and then did a master crazy remix of it that turns into a whole event. But here we go. Check this tune out. I hope you enjoy. That was Infinite Echoes, Art House Jam, Echo number 3, created by Gazuda at a live jam, November 9th of this year. Thanks for tuning in. I feel all centered and better now. And I'm just now going to take a sip of my tea. Do you love tea? Any old-time listeners will note that the tea episode, one of my oldest episodes that had stayed up for quite a long time, has been taken down. I'm just going to give it a little bit of the old remix, remaster treatment, lay down some cool music very subtly and quietly in the background so that it's a little bit less, just people talking. And it'll be back up as part of Volume 2, not too long from now. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for enduring the awkwardness. Let's take a moment, right? I just did. I just took a moment. Let's say hello to the pictorial key tarot. Okay. Ooh. Nice. Groovy. I like the art they display on the box. The cover of the little white book that's shrink wrapped to the deck has the same, one of the same, and then the extra card. There's usually an extra card or two in some decks, mostly because they want to utilize the excess paper instead of just chuck it. That's a cool little reflection of that image. Let's pop this open here. Oh, this is a tough one. Here we go. I'm gonna have little bits of plastic everywhere, aren't I? Oh, goodness. One of the fun things about doing this is, like, I get to have a little bit of Christmas all year round. By the way, if you happen to come across this show and are an artist interested in creating your own deck, designing your own deck, producing it, and you're already doing that, and you'd like me to review it and give it a shout out and take a good first impression look at it here on my show, by all means reach out to me, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo at gmail.com. Should be in all my platform documentation here on the Sprecher. I'm a fan, and hey, if I get hooked up with some free decks because of it, it'll help this deck addict out. Okay, so the Lo Scarabeo. Lo Scarabeo. I don't know. I'm not trying to be rude. I just love words and how they sound sometimes. And I'm a big theater nerd, right? So visit the Lo Scarabeo website. There's a Law of Attraction Tarot by Marina Roveda and Simone Gabrielli. That must be cool. They have the Universal Tarot. They have the Tarot of the New Vision, which I own, and I don't know if I've done an episode on, but it's interesting and intriguing. It's the backside of every vignette in the decks. And the Initiatory Tarot of the Golden Dawn. That's interesting. I'm always intrigued by decks that report to be either directly related to or inspired by Golden Dawn. But that's a subject for a whole nother issue. A whole nother episode. I'm going to put that advert card over there because this is a weird, nerdy thing, right? But some people throw these away. Some people put this in the box and it stays in the box forever. But decks sometimes don't have any at all. But I am taking a weird approach. And that's that I'm trying to work with this notion, right? That the decks are, as one authority in the world of literature, published books that teach you tarot, one authority whose name escapes me right now, but is in one of these books sitting right here on my shelf. Now the books are finally, by the way, audience, if those of you following along, I've finally arranged my office, right? I think I did an episode about that, but I kind of forget about it, and then I look over, and I'm like, the books are right here, I can touch them. I'm supposed to have to go over to this other room and try and find the one I'm thinking of. Okay, so to finish my thought on that whole theory thing, one author in one of these books, and the books include titles such as The Complete Tarot Reader, Tarot Prediction and Divination, The Book of Thoth, Tarot Spreads, Tarot and the Archetypical Journey, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, the Tarot Dictionary and Compendium, Instant Tarot, The Ultimate Guide to the Rider-Waite Tarot, The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and Psychic Tarot, and of course every single book that has ever come with any deck that I've bought, which are too many to name. But those are, for those of you curious, I just listed the primary bulk of my bibliography, minus the digital PDFs that I've got, that actually were part of the trigger. Because I got into archetypes, right? And that led me to see that tarot references archetypes. Some of these same archetypes are crossover and have meaning in each other. Because of, I saw that there was books like Tarot and the Archetypical Journey, which deals with Jung and stuff like that. So that's my bibliography in terms of physical books that I will be referencing, if in case I haven't referenced or called them all out by name before. I also have several other, like I said, books, blah, 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 blah. One of the authors, as I rewound and reset there, one of the authors gives this humble suggestion. Treat your deck like a person, like a little toy object person. Talk to them like you would plants or pets or a favorite knick-knack that you've gotten conversant with, because it sometimes disappears and reappears and does weird things. And believe it or not, when I first laid hands on a deck, I felt the curious and bizarre calling to indeed acknowledge them that way. And this is a handsome deck. This is a lovely postmodern reinterpretation of the standard classic Raider Wyatt Smith imagery in a very we're going to be very strict and true to the form of it. But what this author or this artist, which I believe I was correct in, we'll find out in a second when I open the book, was also, very clever and interestingly good, did a good job at, a better job, if I might say, than other decks, in my opinion, as rough as that sounds, at doing that. I've seen one deck that's, that does a job, people like it, of putting the figures in the traditional Raider Wyatt Smith imagery into sort of more 3D looking art. And there's several that have done that with more realism and more surrealism in their rendering. This one, The Pictorial Key by David Corsi, I was right, manages to strike a good balance of not looking too modern, not looking too Photoshop-y, not looking too CGI-ish. And I've seen all of that. And I mean in professionally published, sitting on a bookshelf at Barnes & Noble deck. And I don't mean to poo-poo anybody's deck. They all work for somebody. Somebody's going to be like, this is so cool. It's like I'm playing a certain video game that I played back in the 80s, right? And so the CGI-looking ones, huzzah for you for doing it. But they don't connect for me. This is a pretty simple and rudimentary little white book. Interesting variation on the opening mythos. I'm still uncertain as to where things fall in terms of reading, protected content of other people's that's already been published. But there's something here about calling the pictorial key a specific and particular tradition of the tarot family that was handed down thanks to the Anglo-Saxon esoteric schools, which is slightly different in terms of the first note struck into who we should thank for having this deck, especially coming from an Italian company. But then again, everybody gets to write their own little white book. It touts the artist's collaboration with the publisher to adhere to a simple and direct representation with modern painting techniques. And then it goes right into the meanings. And it's a very simple, it looks not too much different. Oh, and then it's in various languages, right? So it's super short. Then it's in Italian, and then it's in something else, I think it looks like. Maybe in Spanish. Yeah. Italian and then Spanish. Which is cool, right? Let's translate it. Woohoo. I'm all about that. that's a little white book that I don't need to try to keep track of. No offense to this deck or to the artists behind it, because it is pretty much essentially the actual pictorial key to the tarot as written by Wyatt, this book right here. The pictorial key to the tarot, the veil and its symbols. And that introduction, as written by Arthur Edward Wyatt, being fragments of a secret tradition under the veil of divination. That book's right there, and it will cover rudimentary definitions and or guidance from that school of thought, from the pictorial key school of thought. That's the school of thought that kind of undergirds or is the fundamental foundation of your traditional Rider Waite Smith or RWS. I've occasionally gone out of my way to call it just the Smith deck and watch people go, which one are you talking about? And I'm like, the artist who drew them. And it's a very iconic, very of the time she made the art, very sort of representational and flat, but still lush with depth and meaning. So, welcome to the family. Oh, I should replace. Hold on, which one is it? Left is receptive, and right dominant hand is creative. Right? Someone's trying to get a hold of me. I should maybe check that, but not right now. In a few minutes, I'm just gonna switch my mala, my beads, over to my receptive hand. Because first I wanted to rein in my voice, and that helped a lot. So I was explaining earlier and got sidetracked that one of the weird experimental techniques, extending from the notion that we should treat each deck as a person or a collection of little people, right? Because each card is sort of a facet of the individual. It's a collective. It's a hive mind that's here to show you its many facets in specific order that will help as mirrors to help me or those being doing the consulting understand internal important things of an archetypical nature. So given that, I don't want to just throw away these bonus cards, even if they're silly and have very much in it. First of all, I'll want to remember about this other deck and to go to this website. So that'll always be there as a reminder. I could forget for 5 years. And 5 years from now, I'll be like, oh yeah, I never went to that website. I wonder what's going on. Second of all, the other deck, the one that's just like the pictorial key to the tarot, and then the picture of the priestess, and the name in various languages, and the icon and name of the publisher in black, which is sexy, and the back of the card, the deck, with the design of the back of the deck, which is a very Rosicrucian. It's not Order of the Golden Dawn, but they have their own version of this too. But the Rose Cross, which is of course has got significance in a sacred geometry kind of analysis sort of way. I put them in a pouch, and I put them there in the largest pouch that ever came with any given deck. And for the purposes of making this episode interesting, we're going to look at the contents of that couch, because I haven't looked at it in a really long time. And I'll talk about them and air them out for you guys so you can get a sense of what I'm doing with the pouch. But it's a sort of bit of tarot magic ritual. The reason I have 3, soon to be probably 4 travel boxes for decks is because I want to develop a system of multiple deck consultancy. I'm not going to use every single deck every single time, but I want the very same sort of statistical roulette wheel. Like, what are you going to draw when you split the deck? What did I just draw when I split the deck? I got the 10 of Cups. Ooh. I like that this deck has something many other decks do not, but it incorporates numbers and pips. So it's like, even if you don't know the image, you can instantly know it's the 2 of something, and that must be wands or staves, or whatever the other word people use for it. I like that. They're still in order, so I'm obviously just pulling them in in Arcana order. It's Two of Cups. So, cool. I'll have to go back and re-listen to that and take an interpretation of that in post when I do a remaster of this episode as I come to the end of Volume 2. Because I like to layer things in over time. It makes it re-listenable, right? Gives you a reason to come back and to listen to more. Especially if I can edit out and clean up all those mumbles that I mispronounced stuff. So, from the very beginning of my focused efforts, not the very beginning of my efforts of collecting decks, I already had several of these sitting about, opened and unopened. But I was like at a store and I just felt a coalition. I saw a display where there was a standard Raider Wyatt Smith tarot deck, and I'd never gotten one. And I was like, it was wobbling. It was going at me. It was like, I call it the woohoo of like, get me. And obviously, the dark side can use that. Don't sue me, Star Wars. The dark side can use that vis-a-vis the form of an ego trap of constantly seeing things warbling at you that you think you really need, but you really don't. Am I guilty of that? Who knows? Only time and listening to the podcast and myself reviewing the results of the podcast as an experimental arc, because I'm not just going to be randomly talking. There's going to be there's a loosely sketched out scientific methodology that's going to be worked out. So I was in the store and I wondered, is that ego? Is that some supernatural light energy, team light side, right? What the force calling out to me and saying, time is right now. You've had multiple free readings from people, and you've been encouraged to pick up the craft, if I may call it that, the skill, the art form. And here it is. You don't have to get it as a gift. You can give it to yourself as a gift. That's an old wives' tale to make it hooky pooky, and to make it extra special when someone does give you a gift of it. By the way, I fully intend to sort of half honor that, and when I do ever land in a place of being professional, like I'm going to professionally do tarot readings, I'm going to keep in stock a couple of copies of the decks that I use. And the one that's really resonates with someone, if over time that I really feel a calling because of the reading or readings with you, Mr. Zeppo, I'd like to learn, I might give them, that as a gift. But it's the kind of thing that I'll just sort of not keep a bunch in stock, but always be willing to get it. And if it is looking like it's out of stock, I'll buy a bunch, and or whatever, update it, keep whatever's going on. If this 10, 15 years from now, a certain deck I own is no longer available, tough titty, you're out, I'm not going to be able to give that to you as a gift. But I do believe I have, to digress, pardon the salty language and the apparently disrespectful negative energy there, but I'm a bit of a left holdover from when it was okay for anybody of any gender to talk like a salty pirate amongst friends, right? And trusted acquaintances, and that it didn't mean we should always be offended. I'm anti-PC as much as I am anti vulgarity for vulgarity's sake. Am I threading a needle cross-haired? I don't know. Crosswised? I digress. I'm asking too many questions and not answering any, or enough at any rate. At this store with this Raider Wyatt Smith deck, which is in a box somewhere. It was my first Raider Wyatt Smith, and it's the medium-sized one. Oh no, they had the super large one and the medium-sized one. And it was the super big one that was wah, and the little one was or me too. And there was also a crystal ball and a nifty, handy-dandy, prepackaged collection of quartz, just a bundle of quartz, and then some healing stones and some other variety bundles, right? But the healing stones and the quartz stood out to me and did the little wobble. You want us? Do you want to get us by us? This isn't ego trying to make you spend money you can't afford. You're flush right now, and you can use this as a thing to investigate spiritualism and practices and see if some of the hokey pokey magic, voodoo magic nonsense might actually have some validity, right? It might, maybe, just maybe, some of the myth has truth in it. Some of the archetypes have truth in it. So anyways, healing stones. Aventurine, sodalite, pyrite, I'm terrible at pronouncing certain words, pyrite, and onyx. One of the first things from, Geocentral is the provider, assembled from U.S. and imported parts, comes packaged with a velvet pouch. By the way, shout out to Geocentral with the velvet pouch. I don't use the velvet pouches that I've gathered through this acquisition process for the crystals because they generally tend to stay on my altar. And I don't intend to move any of those. I will get some mobile ones when it comes to that, and they'll come with a velvet pouch too. But because I've gotten enough of these, I use these velvet pouches because they're the perfect size. Never change this, you guys. If you're a fan who writes into Geocentral to tell them things, let them know this: the pouches are perfect for the mini, for your average mini and or smaller, variety, like what do you call it when it's a goofy novelty tarot deck? If the tarot deck is like regular standard playing size or sub, like the mini standard playing card deck size, or anywhere in that range, they'll fit in those velvet drawstring pouches, which is super cool because those little decks deserve a little pouch to be in too. And I have a whole preoccupation with pouches and boxes and how to treat them. So anyway, so those plus a bunch of pure energy quartz crystals. And there's a whole blurb about quartz crystals, but I keep those there to remind me, where did I get these? And they're over at Earthbound. They're like one of those, it's an Earthbound brand product, and it's provided by this company. Shout out to them. Genuine, honest, real life, authentic endorsement. Not trying to bullshit anybody. Put you right there for a hot minute. Okay, so the other, the family of cards. Actually, this is great that I'm doing this now. Because I don't think I've done this in a really long time. And if you're new, it'll be helpful. And you'll have some touchstone to reflect back on later when I do the other thing that I did in other episodes. So I have all these different cards from various decks. And like I said, some decks don't have any. So this isn't the complete and total collection of, this isn't fully representative, but it's very close. And I've randomly been mostly randomly put them in here, but I also have a size order problem. I want to put them in order of descending size, but that might screw up things. I don't know. In general, generally speaking, the magical idea here, if we can allow for such thinking, is that, a well-informed authority on tarot divination earnestly recommends that you treat tarot decks like vessels for consciousness that are cognizant and aware of your questions and are hive-minded and are individual cards that make up a unit of a functioning system within themselves. So these are the oddballs. These are the black sheeps of the family. These are the cards that sometimes get thrown away, get thrown in a drawer, get kept in boxes until those get thrown away, or get kept but always set aside and with little mini rituals. And for me, I thought I'm going to keep them together, keep them safe, and keep them with one another so that through extension, right? And here's where I get weird. How is this possible? In what universe would this even be real? Well, in this universe, this electromagnetic universe, this universe in which even Max Planck, or Planck, or Planck, however you pronounce his name, one of the founding fathers of the postmodern scientific method, the advancement of quantum mechanical physics and all that is indebted to many scientists, but he's one of them. And he said, he said two things that attribute, or maybe that's a different guy, the other thing. But one of these two things was him, and the other might be someone else. But when you take the first sip from the cup of science, you give up your belief in God. But when you get to the bottom of the glass, you've come back full circle to God. And I probably am incorrect in the exact wording. Don't sue me. But you can look up some of that wording and hopefully it'll ping with and if it's completely misattributed, I apologize. It's not on purpose. And another thing that I think Planck said was that underneath everything, at the center of everything, there must be some matrix of awareness for any of this to be happening the way that it happens. Something to that effect. And these were guys who argued and debated and perfected and fought to create, quantum mechanical physics as we know it. So that's fascinating, right? And who knows? So how do I apply that? One of the more recent developments in quantum mechanical theory is that entangled particles, entanglement being a process or a state of being which is difficult to pinpoint, but has to do with the very nature with which subatomic material works. Subatomic matter, as it resonates into existence, exists in these virtual blobs of potentiality we call subatomic particles. And they coalesce into that which we call, the primary fundamental building blocks of reality, the primary elements. And at their fundamental core level, the different building blocks of these building blocks two of them or three of them or collections of them, I may point out, because it's not limited to just one or two, but the example that is commonly known in popular science and thus in popular culture is that one or the two of them can become, quote, quantumly entangled. Google that phrase if what I'm saying is not making sense to you at all yet. But if two photons or two dark matter particles or two particle wave beam packets, because it is both a wave and a beam at the same time, and it is disjointed and distributed and doesn't follow the same path as the rest of the wave beam, but somehow reunites when it arrives there and emits itself as either particles or waves, depending on the context and what is required by the instrumentation and the apparatuses receiving it, right? So those kinds of event objects can become quantumly entangled. In other words, they create a bond that is a quantum in nature. In other words, smaller than we can measure and having to do with the fractal nature in which reality unfolds. Now, science lacks words for explaining how these events can be described or how the subsystems of these events can be described, but Zen/Buddhism/ esoteric mysticism has several words for some of these, like logos, like yantra, like it's a word that's akin to mudras, but I forget. Oh, I'm forgetting one. But there are fractal, organic, real, holographic. I know it's a big word salad there, but it's one big bucket of label. Event machine things, organs, you might say, or muscle tissue, nervous tissue of the universe at the very fabric of reality, at the very level of, when Ant-Man has to go try and rescue his mom, so he dives into the quantum realm. That's not completely made up science fiction based on a few things from postmodern physics. That's also ancient sacred geometry and sacred esoteric mysticism being explored in a realistic, pragmatic way. So, my point is, each of these pieces of paper coated in plastic, the plastic's not evil, but it sometimes isn't quite as healthy, but they're all made up of the same stuff. And if those things, at that level, at the root matrix level of reality, of material, if all the little bundles of energy, photons, and probability waveform functions, that's what I get to, is like when you dig down deep, what you're talking about is a collection bundles upon bundles of probability waveform functions that create these events we call objects, right? Each of these is quantumly entangled with the deck they come from. Ba-da! End of drum roll, please. Bucket of fish. Bah! Fireworks and, orchestral, triumphant, whatever you call that kind of music. Huzzah! So if each of these objects is quantumly entangled with a bit o spirit and a bit o, if I treat it and respect it and endow it with some of my own energy and chi, it can then, act as transmitter of like communion in this sacred little pouch I put them all in together, and also, help me weave sort of coordination magic between them in an unconscious sort of root level place where they all know each other as decks of conscious decks, and they all can, in theoretically, facilitate one another by harmonizing, whether or not they were called upon, or I don't know. I'll get into the weeds there, but I want to go and test and refine the thesis that says with that kind of work, you can create a very sophisticated system that is anchored and rooted in tarot and its variations, but can be its own broader, like big picture, multi-level kind of divinatory practice. Wowza! That was a big ramble. So I gave you my. I'll do it again later in more depth with the books. But here is the card breakdown in my magic bag, of which I apologize to anyone or to the decks that are being missed out on. Oh, and some of them don't have their titles in their cards. This one, I believe, is from the Sacred Path cards. I'm gonna guess. Yeah, this makes sense. The color coordination with the box, which is up on the shelf. All illustrations by Linda Childers Amber Fawn. Copyright 1990. Jamie Sams and Linda Childers. All rights reserved. Honor and respect. This is American indigenous peoples imagery being used in order to sort of, do oracle divinatory work. I have not taken a look at that in a while, but I'm just going to run through all of these, as many of them as I can remember the titles of. This one is a little pocket tarot deck that's kind of more square than it is round. It's in a little velveteen pouch from Crystal Bag. I have two of these, and because I have two of them, this is the little one. I will set that one aside and read its text. I believe it's identical in its big, giant jumbo form. It is. So I'll set that aside because I've got a lot to say about that deck. We'll come back to that. This other one is the little mini deck from the Pamela Coleman Smith, Raider Wyatt, and it's the Pamela Coleman Smith, Edward Wyatt, and writer publisher deck to give proper sort of post Me Too honor to the lovely woman who created the artwork. From the middle of the card, there's a bio card. There's two cards. There's a bio card about Pamela Coleman Smith, and then there's the USS Games Incorporated, publisher's rights and list of other decks that you can get. So tarot decks, there's a really long list of tarot decks, including titles that range from Ancestral Path, Calistoga, Ceremonial Magic, Chinese, Egyptian, Feng Shui, Halloween, Universal White, Vampire, Wonderland, and Zolar themed decks. And they also have another little list underneath for cartomancy endgames, Angel Meditation, Angel Power, Blessing cards, Gypsy Witch. None of these I've gotten. Wolf Song cards, Shaman Wisdom cards. I want to get that. I do have a Mystical Shaman Oracle deck over here. It's waiting to be unpackaged soon. But as each episode tends to run forever, I'm not going to get to it anytime soon. But from the middle of the bio card on Madam Smith, around 1903, she joined the Order of the Golden Dawn, I've spoken about them and someone who may or may not be them, because I haven't been able to personally verify as of yet. They've made lots of outlandish claims, and I don't know. They may be false, they may be true. I make no judgments. But apparently, historically speaking, Miss Smith joined the Order of the Golden Dawn. In 1909, under the guidance of Arthur Edward Wyatt, she undertook for token payment, and that's a disservice to all womankind, a series of 78 allegorical paintings described by Wyatt as a rectified tarot deck. Put a pin in that. We're going to have to do a whole episode about the many origin mythologies and some of the debate and argument. The next one is, the next deck in this, because I'm reading off the cards in my little bag of magic, right? The Hanson Roberts Tarot Deck by Mary Hanson Roberts, which is a beautiful, she had two runoff cards. One has the name of the deck, like I just read, and a collection of all the icons of the suits, framed like by some, like a vignette, and the beautiful Celtic knot background on the back of the card. And the other one has a gypsy woman, which I don't think is any particular archetype from the standard imagery, pulling open a curtain. Behind her, there's a darker, shadowy door, the portal-like door. She appears to be in a castle building, like a stone construction building, and a balcony, but maybe there's a stairwell right next door. And she's like chilling there with the curtain pulled a little aside, and in the darkness, in the portal of the door, it says "To all believers." And I don't know what that means exactly to her. If I ever talk to this author, I'd love to find out. The next card is a Lo Scarabeo deck, Tools for a Spiritual Journey with Tarosophy, Tarot Association Worldwide. Oh, this is a flavor card from a deck I got from them. Not sure which, because it doesn't say it, but it's got like advert for their association. So a shout out to Tarosophy, the Tarot Association's worldwide group. There is a website somewhere here, tarotassociation.net. I visited a very, very, very long time ago. With this invitation, you will receive an exclusive Lowe's Scarborough 15% discount on your first year membership. But it is a subscription yearly membership, yo. So somebody takes their tarot business seriously. That's the thing I'm interested in sort of exploring for myself, right? Like, do I evolve this from an interesting amateur citizen scientist, citizen spiritualist investigation of the tradition into a full-blown business? Maybe. Here's the deck. Here's the card from the deck we just opened. Let's put that in there. Oh yeah, and here's the interesting blunder I've made. This is another Los Scarborough deck with a flavor card. And this deck I gifted to someone. It was a vampire deck from a very specific or particular bit of lore, and I don't know what kind of lore. I don't remember if it was from a book series that was popular in Italy or a graphic novel series, but somebody commissioned, and this publisher published, a deck using characters from this artist's world. Also, like, integrated into traditional tarot imagery and system. So it was like traditional tarot, but, with those characters from this vampire world written by so-and-so, whose name is not, it might be the Ludi Lescott, I'm guessing, right? Ludi Lescott being perhaps the artist or the name of the character or something. But I don't have that deck anymore. I keep it in my magic bag because I want to help contribute to that person. So that's another little bit of saucy magic. That card stays in my magic bag of black sheep cards to facilitate any readings ever done by that other person. Here we have two flavor cards from, I'm fairly certain, the poorly named Easy Tarot. Beautifully executed art. Here we go. Here's the box. Actually, I stand corrected. It is the Gilded Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. The box, it comes in 2 boxes. The bigger box, the one that's like book sized that you find at the bookshelf next to the tarot books, really does. The first words you catch says Easy Tarot. Learn to read the cards once and for all. A book by Josephine Ellershaw. Gilded Tarot Deck by Ciro Marchetti. That Easy Tarot, it's part of like someone wrote a book in collaboration with this deck. But I liked the deck. I don't like the name Easy Tarot, and I do appreciate that book. It's on my shelf somewhere. There we go. The book is called Easy Tarot Handbook. We could have gotten a slightly less goofy. But these 2 flavor cards have the artwork from the back of the deck, which is a beautiful gilded Italian Baroque, depiction of like a many-layered sun, kind of, against a complex grillework background. These 2 cards have different spreads. A daily spread and the traditional Celtic cross spread. And I keep these here, for the communion, right? And also what should I do, a spread? Here's a random easy spread that hopefully I'll remember how to do. But I was going to use that one. I have a blank one from a deck I can't remember. It's just a blank piece of card. It was probably at the very front of the deck to protect them. I use that. I shall be using that at the front of this pile to protect the very first card, keep them all together. One of my favorites. I can recognize the backs, right? If the flavor card or the black sheep card, the bonus card, has the actual published print of the pattern of the back of the deck, then I can usually remember. This is another Lo Scarabeo. It's the tarot of the New Vision I referenced earlier. It's lovely. I look forward to really studying that deck. Here's the larger size. I got my full size, I still call it the medium because there's the big jumbo of the Raider Wyatt Smith, or the Smith Raider Wyatt, or the Smith Rider. It doesn't matter. Anyways, the next one. Another one that I've really enjoyed the times I've dabbled with it. Someone else has read for me with this card in depth for free. The Wildwood Tarot. That's a lovely. It's less of a. For example, the vampire one I was just talking about. It was pretty close to traditional tarot symbology in terms of figures and what they're doing. It's more like flavor art, right? The Wildwood is much more of a true fusion, a true crossover. We'll do in-depth discussion about that. This is one of the... I know the back, but it doesn't have anything on the front of it. Is it this one? No, because that one's front to back. Is it that one? No. No, I don't have it right here. I thought I had it right here. Because I have like a pile of them on my desk, or my altar, as it were, and then the rest of them are in their boxes. Maybe this is a different one that's in boxes. I don't remember now, but it's pretty design, kind of. There's a golden star field in the back, and then there's a mandala-esque sort of vintage print pattern, floral, with circles and stars in terms of geometric shape. So that, maybe that's the other blank one. But I'm going to put that one in the very back. I'm going to put the blank one in the very back. I'll put the blank one in the very back and put this one in the very front. Okay, whatever. I fuck around. Okay, 2 other ones. Another deck that I haven't fully connected with. It's 2 pieces of bio and flavor letters. Or are these different ones? These are different ones. One of them is the Jerry and Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks deck. And it talks about how Esther and Jerry are the leading edge Abraham Hicks teachers and researchers. And this is a deck they put together based on his work and teachings, right? If you're not familiar. Go to the Googles. This other deck is from Mike Doley, and I can't remember the name. The Mike Doley card deck designed by Brian Starr Best. Photo of Mike Doley by Michael Cairns. But it doesn't say the name of the... Infinite Possibilities. No, those are names of other books he wrote. What deck is this? I think this is like, if there's a Universe Got Your Back deck in my collection, then it's that one. I'm not sure. It's okay, it doesn't matter, because the magic works regardless of whether or not I'm aware or not aware. Okay, so here, and I've debated what to do with these, whether I should keep them there or put them to use somehow, but I've got another deck that covers this usage, so it's not really necessary. But I have two collections of chakra cards. One is from the Golden Heart, the Psychic Heart Tarot, and the other, one of my early acquisitions, when I first decided to go, okay, I'm not just going to look at decks and want to buy them, I'm going to start collecting them. And the other is from, it's like a sister deck, same publisher, same artist. Where is your box? The Psychic Tarot. So within that author's vision of how to use the deck, you shuffle these in there as part of your readings. Now, I worked with them as that, and it was helpful. And also, I have a whole other deck that I use, or that I intend to use to assess chakra readings. And so these are chilling in the bag. These might go back into their normal decks in the future, but I'm not sure. So, one of those things. I'm actually, now that I think about it, I have this other pouch that I used for my Mudras deck, but I recently gifted that. And that person keeps all their decks in all their boxes and would have no use for a pouch. So I kept the pouch. And I hope that deck is doing them good service. I'm going to separate these chakra deck cards, because although I do, but I also want there to be they've been in there. We'll set them aside for now. We'll see. And now the final card is the big jumbo one, of the one I skipped earlier. Ordo Templi Orientis. The tarot is a pictorial representation of the forces of nature as conceived by the ancients according to a conventional symbolism. At first sight, one would suppose this arrangement to be arbitrary, but it is not. It is necessitated by the structure of the universe, and in particular, the solar system as symbolized by the Holy Kabbalah. Aleister Crowley, International Headquarters of Ordo Templi Orientis, which is his secret order, which I think may, but may not be, because I don't have the book open in front of me right now, may or may not be a splinter group or a rival group to the Order of the Golden Dawn. And as any of you who are into tarot may or may not already know, Aleister Crowley is a figure shrouded in much controversy. But we'll have to put a pin in that, save that for discussion at some other time, because my time is up for this episode. My throat is dry. We've welcomed this beautiful deck, this more recent pictorial key, and we can go into those discussions of all those pins we put on the board very soon. But I'm putting David, what was his name? I just totally blanked on his name. Where'd he go? Where's his box? Folks, I'm a serious professional. David Corsi. I'm going to put the David Corsi deck. By default, I kind of call the decks by their authors or their creators' names. So this is the Corsi deck. I'm going to put the Corsi deck over here with my pile of currently reshuffling. That's not a proper conjugation. I am currently in the process of reshuffling which decks are housed in which travel box. We'll have to do a whole episode about that too. Sorry for rambling. Sorry for spiraling out of control. Sorry for making this live recording 72 minutes and 22 seconds long. up until this point. But I'm going to leave you now, hopefully, for your pleasure and enjoyment, the weird fusion mix virtual band track. Wow, my words are really losing it. I'm going to leave you with that bit of music I opened the show with. I'll let the whole track play out, and I invite you to come back and listen to more podcasts. You're more than welcome to take them in small chunks. You're more than welcome to jump around, listen to this one, listen to any episode from any of the other segments, come back around, whatever floats your boat. Thank you. Much gratitude, much peace, love, and grooviness to you, my friends. Until next time. If you have questions you'd like me to take a totally amateur and totally free reading on, the submission bucket is empty. Drop your questions, like I said, anonymous. Give me your basic, 3-4 sentences about your context, and then the question, what should I do next to solve this problem? Something phrased along those lines, but put it in your words. Email it to me, theincorrigible MrZeppo @gmail.com. And I will get around eventually, in the not too distant future, to taking readings with you as part of my journey of self-education here in how tarot works. Don't forget to tune in to my other segments. Good Morning Trumptopia. Late Night Thoughts. Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey is not my work. That's a great show, though. If you can dig up Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey, someone's clipped that out of Saturday Night Live and put it on YouTube. But Late Night Thoughts with me, the incorrigible MrZeppo, and others. Check them out. I might be setting up right now, in fact, to do a live recording of Cannabis Talk. So I better wrap things up. Thanks for tuning in. Keep on being good humans, folks. Pay it forward.